This is a bike I sampled a few weeks ago in the mountains in Italy, and you're going to notice that there's no what we would call outside shots. The reason is we, or rather my intrepid camera woman, my wife, was stopped from filming by the Carabinieri. These are the serious national police in Italy, and they said the roads were too narrow and dangerous for her to try and film at the side of the road next to some big cliffs. And to be fair, you know what, they were right. There was no room to safely get out of the way of any traffic. We thought about doing the usual and ignoring them, but they came back and checked on us twice during the day, so it was definitely the wise decision to listen to them. This should be a moment of pure joyous celebration, a time to feel the warm caress of the definitive job satisfaction. These are the Apennine Mountains of central Italy. The historic city of Florence is not much more than a decent stone throw in that direction. I'm staying in my van on top of a hill on the edge of a lovely town where I can drink a glass of vino rosso, surrounded by as much culture and history as any man could reasonably wish for. And as a biker, it gets even better because the machine I've been riding for the past few days is one that made its debut a year ago, but until now, despite my very best efforts, it had remained frustratingly out of my reach. As a fan of naked sport bikes, this represents, for me, pretty much the holy grail. Don rode it on the track last year, and now, within a year, there's an updated version designed to make it an even better proposition for the road. It's made about 2 stone's throws in that direction in the city of Bologna. It's Ducati's Streetfighter V4 S, and here it is. Now available in this satin black outfit, the Streetfighter looks meaner than ever, almost evil now. For me, already the best looking of all the Super Nakeds, I was initially disappointed that it wasn't red when I picked it up from the factory. I'm generally not fond of black bikes, but after spending a few days with it, I am loving this finish. This is the Panigale V4 Superbike transformed into a naked bike, but with none of the dumbing down that would usually entail. Manufacturers invariably lop off a significant portion of their superbike's power during the undressing process, but not here. Ducati decided that they wouldn't be diluting any of the potential thrills just because the fairing was going in the bin. There's plenty of logical, sensible reasons to retune, detune and essentially emasculate a bike that can lap within a few seconds of a MotoGP machine when it's destined to receive a high handlebar and live on the road. But I so love the fact that Ducati ignored common sense and instead let slip the dogs of war with a very comfortable suede seat, cruise control and a spectacularly silly 208 horsepower. So, ultimately desirable naked bike combined with the ultimate mountain venue means I am the ultimately happy bike journalist, right? If only it were that simple, because in fact I am hugely, deeply frustrated. Who'd have thought it, but I have the right bike in the wrong place, or possibly the wrong bike in the right place. Let me try and explain. Looked at on Google Maps, roads like this that wind their way up and down the sides of mountains with hairpins and tight curves look like a biker's paradise.
Until you actually get on them and realise they're way too tight and narrow for a bike that makes over 200 horsepower.
Truth be told, I rode the ideal bike for these roads a few months ago back in France. Husqvarna's 701 SM would be great fun here, and with around 70 horsepower it would in all reality probably still be a bit too powerful.
So I'm gonna head down this road to the valley floor in search of what I hope is a less hairpin afflicted road where I might be able to get out of first and second gear.
But in the meantime, what can I learn about this outrageous sport bike on road surfaces like these? Sometimes we think we have it bad in South Africa, but most of the roads I've come across after a month of riding in Italy are worse than a lot of what we're used to dealing with. It's not just the usual holes and cracks and crumbling edges. Emilia-Romagna has a massive subsidence problem, so even where the road has an acceptable surface, it's plagued with sudden dips and crests that often you just don't see in time.
The results can be genuinely quite frightening, because when you do get a slightly better surface, the natural inclination is to open up a bit and try and take advantage of it. But then with the increased speed, you may not have the potholes to deal with, but you just don't see the sudden dips in the road, because you're looking further ahead. And a couple of times today, the dips have been so big it feels like the bars have just about been wrenched out of my hands. And to say that's unnerving is a little bit of an understatement. Ah, damn. Stop, please stop the bumps.
Enough of the moaning though, because although we're talking about a barely disguised track-ready superbike, a couple of things soon become very clear.
The semi-active Erlin suspension is, well, it's simply quite brilliant. The fact that it can deal with track duties, and then here on a road like this in street mode, it can absorb nearly all of the bumps and the rubbish that this road is throwing at me. That's an incredible range of abilities.
And as is usual with riding modes, you affect not just the behaviour of the suspension, you also, obviously, adjust how the engine responds to the throttle, and in this case it is very accommodating.
You can roll on and off the gas at really low RPM and speed, and it just behaves utterly predictably, totally consistently, which is what you need. It's a nice soft throttle response in street mode, and it fills you with a lot of confidence. And I have to say, the two-way quick shifter is the same. I mean, no doubt it wants to change gears well north of, say, 10,000 RPM, but it's quite happy to swap the cogs for you even down as low as 2,000 RPM, which is very civilized indeed.
And contrary to all expectations, this is actually a comfortable bike. Yes, there is more weight on your wrist than you get with something like an adventure riding position or a full-on tourer, but then you need that weight on your wrist if you're going to have any kind of sport bike feeling. You need that sense of connection to the front end. The seat as well, it is genuinely plush and good for long stints in the seat. And there's more than enough room for my legs, which is good for someone like me who earned a nickname while racing of Dump It Durrans, which kind of gives you an indication of how good I was. And any bike that's got foot pegs that are too high, they always give my knees jip, and it's been fine while I've been on the Streetfighter. So yeah, it's a comfortable bike. At last I reached the bottom of the valley, and with a road that follows the river, I've hopefully left the hairpins behind and now have a chance to give it more than quarter throttle.
Oh, where's the red line on this thing? The power just seems to keep coming. That is bonkers.
It's up around 14,500 RPM, but even by the time you're halfway to that point, it's beginning to feel pretty fast. And the closer you get to it, the quicker it changes from comfortably rapid to a disorientating, what the hell is going on kind of fast.
I'm sure on a track, it feels much more manageable. But down here on a on a real road with real bumps, especially after the really slow, tight stuff up in the mountains. I've got to be honest, it all feels a touch overwhelming. And if I get caught by an Italian speed cop, I'm not going to get a big fine or go to jail. They're just going to put me straight up against a wall and put me out of their misery. Oh! One thing you obviously do need on a bike that's stupidly fast is a cracking pair of brakes, and you definitely got them here. Everything you could need, massive amounts of power, really good initial bite, and loads and loads of feel. All three elements absolutely perfect. The brakes I don't think could be any better. In fact, up on the mountain where the speeds are so much slower and you're using the brakes most of the time at like slow and medium speeds, they're perfect there as well, and that in a way is a better testament. They're not grabby, they're not too powerful, they're just so good that you forget about them basically, and that is the perfect complement.
My brief time with the Streetfighter V4 is almost over, and even though I'm very grateful to have finally made its acquaintance, I think my overriding emotion now is one of relief. I'm just happy to have survived the experience, given the enormous amount of performance on offer and the extremely confined space I've had to play with. I would very much relish the opportunity to enjoy it on some faster roads, and maybe even to take it to a track where, although it has no fairing to hide from the mega speeds involved, I'm sure it will still be hugely entertaining. The only complaint I heard from Don when he tested it at the circuit last year was that it was perhaps a bit too peaky compared to its competition, and so they would be easier to live with on the road. Well, Ducati has attempted to sort that issue with this update, and I know I've been riding it in isolation, but it really doesn't feel like it's lacking in the mid-range department. It's a fantastic looking, fantastically fast naked sport bike that, in the right environment, is about as rewarding as a serious full-on sport bike can be. I'd have one in my fantasy garage, no doubt, but given the eye-watering price, at least for a bike journalist, I fear my fantasy garage is where it will have to stay. Apologies again for the lack of outside riding shots and for the lack of lean angle. Despite it looking like lovely weather, it was really cold, about 6 or 7 degrees during the day, and the roads were greasy and wet in the shade of any trees, of which there were a lot on those mountainsides. You can't really see the dampness, but it was there, I promise you. I kept stopping to check because there was just so much of it. I eventually thought it was just all dark tar, but it wasn't. Age and cowardliness kept me upright where a younger me might well have ended up wedged under some of that Armco that seemed to be just about everywhere. I did manage though to get a few squirts of full throttle down in the valley, and well, I don't really know what to say. I need to use a wide range of profanities to help get across the sheer assault on your senses that a run to the red line involves, but this is a family-friendly program, so just wow. I don't know what else to say. Other than, weirdly, this often terrifying level of performance comes in a really friendly package. Easy to ride, comfortable. You could happily use it to go and collect your groceries or do a bit of commuting or touring. This dark stealth version of the V4 S Streetfighter is 382,000 Rand, which is 4,000 Rand more than the normal red V4 S, while the base version running non-adaptive suspension but with the same power is, if I remember correctly, just over 320,000 Rand. It's a lot of money, but it's also a lot of bike, and if you've got that sort of cash, then yeah, Why not? Personally, for the tighter roads of Europe or somewhere like the mountains of the Western Cape, I think the new Streetfighter V2 and its 150 horsepower might actually be a more enjoyable alternative. Hopefully I'll be riding one of those quite soon, and I'll let you know.